So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Symbolism Happens Spotlight, a show where we highlight a member of the Symbolic World community. We talk to them, get their story, how they got introduced to these ideas, and then we just discuss the ways they use them or relate to them in their lives. So today we have with us Jacopo. Thank you for coming on the show. So I just wanted to start off maybe with an introduction. Could you maybe present yourself, what you do, and how you encountered the ideas of Symbolic World thinking?
Yes, I'm an Italian teacher, as you can hear from my accent, and I am a Catholic teacher from a Salesian school, which is an order of founded by Saint John Bosco. And I've met. I took the Peterson route, basically. I met Jonathan through the Kermit video, and yeah, and I was drawn in by the potential uses of symbolic intuition in teachings. I was drawing because it is interesting. First of all, yeah, I use a lot of stories, fairy tales, legends, myths in my classroom, and so I was always interested in interpretations, readings, and ways to bring deeper understanding into my classroom. However, yeah, not directly without explicitly, saying what it is about, because it's impoverishing it. And I teach to children, so it's not accessible to them in that way. However, to tell the right story at the right moment when the students are bringing up some arguments is I found quite useful, and so that's my main interest. So I'm happy to see the latest Jonathan fairy tales turn, and yeah, that's basically all.
All right, nice. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about fairy tales, stories, myth a little bit later. But just before,
Yes.
could you talk to us a little bit about the Salesian system, the sort of educational philosophy behind it, what it is, and all of that?
Yeah, the Salesian system is called the preventive system. Sistema preventivo was the original term. And it's basically the educational system of Saint John Bosco, San Giovanni Bosco, which was a saint in the late 1800. Um, he lived right after the Napoleon period in Italy, northern Italy, and in a society that was becoming industrialized very fast, he found a way to teach young men who were imprisoned how to go into society, and find a place in society. His boys were usually very poor or from the streets, and usually very rebellious, because there was a very harsh top-down um, repression at the time, because the king was trying to, bring order. And after Napoleon, there was this massive system of legislation that was left, and there was a fight between church and state at the time, and so this system was called revolutionary at the time. So there was suspects around Don Bosco of being a revolutionary, to want to use the youths to go against the states. So it was a very harsh time, and he brought an educational system of love, of charity, basically, where I think it's easier to understand if I speak about the dream that inspired the method, because
Go ahead.
when Don Bosco was 9 years old, he made a prophetic dream, and he found himself in a grassland, surrounded by boys, by young boys. He was 9 years old. They were of his age, around his age. And those boys were blaspheming. They were beating each other. They were doing all sort of nasty things. And Don Bosco, being heavy-handed, he was a farmer. He started to beating them into submission. He started to beat them, to make them stop blaspheming, stop stealing, stop whatever you're doing. But he is stopped by a man, a mysterious man, that says, and he says, not like this, little John. You must earn these friends with charity and obedience. And Don Bosco replies, well, how can I do it? It's not possible. They are not listening to me. And the man says, I will give you a teacher. And he shows him a woman. Of course, later in his life, he will identify these two. Well, it's quite mysterious, but it's clear who they are, because the man says, the woman is she who your mother taught you to greet 3 times a day. So yeah, basically it's the Holy Virgin. And a Holy Virgin becomes the teacher of Don Bosco of this system of and in the dream he sees the boys turned into wolves and bears and snakes, but later they are turned into lambs at the sign of the cross. So this is the first dream that he has. Is known as the 9 years dream, and he starts, and his mother interprets the dream for him and says that he has to become a priest, basically against the will of his family. His father died earlier, but his brother, who is the head of the family at the time, is against it. And that's the beginning. So he has this direct approach. He's very violent. He has a very violent will, and he has to learn to be meek. And so his method is this combination of energy, very strong energy. One of his pupils later will say that if Don Bosco didn't become a saint, he would have become one of the greatest criminals in history, because he had this energy within him that was uncontainable. And so he had directed that energy into education, basically. And so he tried to lure children with fun, basically. He learned to walk on the rope. He learned to do backflips, everything to claim their attention. This when he was 10. And after the show, basically, he repeated by memory the preacher's speech of the Sunday. So all the children who didn't went to mass listened to the speech a second time, to the sermon. Thank you. I didn't remember the word. And he had this incredible memory. He could repeat almost anything by memory, word by word. And that's basically the system. You lure with within the oratory, with the games, with fun activities, but edifying activities, not just fun to pass time or to you generally involve boys and kids with social activities or mutual education. You are 16 and you are involved in creating the games for the 12 years olds, or so you create this hierarchy that goes up to the teacher. So we use a lot of the older kids to teach the younger kids. There is this ladder between the teacher and the youngest, and these usually bring responsibility within the oldest, and brings a desire for emulation in the youngest.
And what are some techniques maybe that you've used that you've taken inspiration from St. John?
The Bonjourno is the good day. It's a practice that every morning we start class half an hour later than all the other schools in Italy, because we take half an hour to do the Bonjourno, the good day, which is a moment of pray and to wish, no, to give a key to read the day that is to come. So you give your students a thought, and that thought has to is basically a top down, something that they will have to bring in the day, and later at the end of the day you reprise the point that you've made, and you show them how that's manifested within the day.
Okay.
Yeah. Today we will talk about lying, and at the end of the day we show how that's manifested in the day. So you have an opening that creates this space of attention for that specific topic, and at the end of the day, and usually most of the students the first times forget about it, but then you, at the end of the day, you bring it out again, and they see how it manifested. And then the next day, usually after a couple of months, they become used to it, and so they are able to do it themselves. And so at the end of the day, you pick one of them and ask to him, so what happened today about this topic that we brought forth?
Okay.
That's my favorite technique.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a pretty cool one. It's a pretty interesting one. Is this maybe similar to the way that you use stories, like fairy tales and stuff like that, to teach also? To open sort of like a space for imagination, and then you bring it back at the end of the day to maybe teach a lesson or give a moral, something like that?
Well, I think it's how fairy tales works, basically, because it's something that is very easy to memorize. A fairy tale has a recurring themes, has very basic categories and structures in it, so everyone can memorize it by heart pretty quickly. Everyone remembers Little Red Riding Hood after a couple of times that he has heard it. So it's something that you can bring it to through your life. It's not necessary for me to bring it out. So yeah, I teach you. I say to you the tale, and maybe I point to a couple of key passages, and a couple of times during the year I bring it out if it's proper. But the point is to give them something that they can bring with themselves without me. So for the rest of their life, they will have their fairy tale in their memory. Memory is to bring is something akin to eating. You make something part of yourself by memorizing something, and so when the time is right, that fairy tale will emerge again with under a new light, and will shine when the time is right. This is not a profession for that will see the fruits. We just throw the seed.
Okay.
Many of the fruits will emerge later when we probably won't be able to see them.
And what's the response to the kids when you introduce them the fairy tales and things like that? Are they receptive to it? Do they maybe view them as silly stories? Generally, how do they react?
They are absolutely opposed to them the first 2 minutes.
Okay.
Because they are not used to patience and void. They have their lives especially today, they have their lives filled with stimulus, and they can't find a vacuum to listen. And so they are not used to it, and they fight. They fight because they want to be entertained. And at any seconds of their day today, sadly, that's the hardest thing. We have to use them to silence. We have to use them to, and that's by the way, I believe the reason why they can't read well today, because the reading skills are falling down precipitously. It's because reading needs effort. It requires effort. It's an active and not passive way of gaining knowledge. Videos and audio are passive, meaning that you receive them whatever you do. Yes, you have to pay some attention to it, but it's mostly passive. While the book will not do anything unless you put your head into it and read it. So I think it's a problem of being used to something, and they are not most of the time. And so I have to use to train them to that. And fairy tales are a great way, because after 5 minutes I have them, and they would ask me to say the tale up to 12 times a day, and they will not get tired.
Nice. Well, you alluded to it a little bit briefly during your explanation, but can we take a little bit of a tangent and speak to maybe some of the problems you see with the current educational system, and maybe some of the fixes or solutions that the Salesian models brings to those issues?
Yeah, the problem with the modern educational system is that there is no initiation into anything. It's just a polarization between knowledge, pure knowledge, notions, or pure practical skills. And so there is this polarity between extremes of, what can I have that will be of use for me in my life, and that is the pole of competence, skills. And so many schools go toward that poles and forgets all about knowledge. And then there's the other pole that we would say the traditional pole, but it's more like early modern, because in the school system they talk about 1800 as traditional. It's not traditional. It's
Okay, you go back way further than that.
Yeah, because the real traditional system are the trainee system. I want to be a blacksmith, I go to a blacksmith and live with the blacksmiths. And the other is reading and meditation and mentoring. But today, this is a school that's that came out from the Industrial Revolution, so it's very industrialized. The bell, the rhythm, the desks, it's everything, but is rebellious against that identity. So it keeps that identity structurally, but it's all about creativity, and freedom it's freedom from more than freedom of. And so you see they teach about everything goes, it's just your opinion, man. You heard it.
Yeah.
So the problem is that within the discourse there is not the solution, because every opposite calls the other. The top-down imposition of the industrial school to forge the industrial man is seen as tyrannical, because it is, and the liberal hippie way of teaching is ineffective and brings depression, basically, because you are aimless. And so that's the children-centric. One is teaching-centric, the other is children-centric, while teaching should be, God-centric, but if you're not religious, at least love-centric. Love for the subject, love for life, love for the discipline, So yeah, that's a lot of confusion. The Salesian way is a revival of the old ways, basically, because it's centered around the relationship and not around one of the poles of the relationship. So the teacher is called to love, and the child is called to obey. And this is not Jonathan, by the way. It's explicitly Don Bosco. Saint John Bosco says this. So there is this dynamic of love from above, obedience from below, which is drawn out from love, by love. Obedience comes as a natural response from love, and because one of the most famous phrases from Don Bosco is, "It's not enough that the children are loved; they must know they are loved." So,
am I getting the correct sense in this? Because I feel like what you're contrasting between that model and the current model is the central role of the educator in the model. From my experience going through education for many years, it's almost as if the more you progress, especially the more you progress into university and higher education, the actual professor becomes less and less important, and the pure content becomes what matters. Like I know in my situation, there are people in my classes that can go pretty much an entire semester without showing up to class because we have the learning objectives, we know what we need to know, and then whichever means helps you get that information at the end of the day. Well, in my case, it's medicine, right? So medicine is medicine. I don't need to learn it from you or you or you. And so the relationship between the student and the teacher is completely severed. Whereas I'm also doing some historical research on the history of medicine. If you go back in time, you see this intimate relationship between the doctor, the teacher doctor, that is, dissecting with his students. He's present with them. They're going with them. He's living with them sometimes. And so that relationship of the centrality of the educator has kind of been eroded as we've progressed into modern education. Is that something you would agree with?
Yes, you can't do that with small children because they are dependent from you. Yet they are developing robots to take care of them. So. But I took part in lessons where I am a student in media education right now. That's my second degree. So with the topic of companions for children, artificial companions, is quite hot for in the educational world. Yeah, it's
what are your opinions on
I will not say anything compromising tonight. So, however, I am quite skeptical that would be in any way good for them, because I would say yes, but can the companion hit the children? And usually the experts would answer me, no, we never. We would program it to never hit back the children, even if the children hurts him. Well, then that's not educational. Having a friend that cannot strike back at you, it's not doesn't make you grow up. There is no resistance in the relationship. It's devouring love, all about me, and you are a servant, basically, not a friend. And so that's the problem basically with the virtual reality and the metaverse, because the metaverse has no resistance. There is no fatigue. There is no, and people grow in fatigue. That's what teachers have forgotten. Many teachers have forgotten in primary school. That's we must the directive is that we must make everything as easy as possible for children, and this is explicit. It's not implicit. It's the children-centric style of education. So or ergonomic, everything must be made for them, for their way of learning, in and if you make it easy for them, they will learn, which is not completely false. Everyone has his style. There is someone who likes to read. There is those who likes to listen. There are those who are more akin to stories, and there are those who are more akin to schemes. And I don't think schemes is the right word, but whatever. And so, you have to recognize the inclinations of your students and use them to maximize their learning. However, everyone must know how to read. It's a problem if you say, I am more image driven, so I will only learn from images. I mean, yeah, you can, but you're weaker than you would be. And not just in your skills, but in your character, because you only do what comes easy to you. And so I'm a left-handed. Many years ago, they would have forced me to learn to write with my right hand, and they would have been right and they would have been wrong at the same time. And that's the problem, because to avoid one error, you go into the other. Just C.S. Lewis says, the devil sends temptations in the world in couples, so that to avoid one, you fall into the other. So yeah, that's one of the errors I see. You have to strike which is hard.
It's not an easy task.
Yeah, you have to strike that balance.
So the role of the educator also to maybe know the students and push them a little bit past the limit of what they're capable of doing right now, to challenge them to
that's Vygotsky.
Try something new.
Yes, that's Vygotsky, the zone of proximal development.
Yeah, okay.
The Peterson uses the image of the surfer, on the edge of the dynamism and the right balance. If you are too rigid, you fall. If you are too if you too dynamic, I guess you fall.
Yeah. And do you often think about, because I feel like those ideas relate a lot to some of the symbolism ideas Jonathan has talked about in his videos. Do you often relate those to your teaching? Do you think about those like consciously, or is it more of a subconscious thing that you just do more naturally as you teach?
Initially consciously, and now they come more natural. So teaching is one other trick that we teacher is to instantiate a routine. So everyone learns by routines. So if something is returning, you maximize the learning from it because you expect it, and your mind and your body prepares for it when it's approaching, even without you realizing it. So at the same day of the week, at the same hour, we will do a reading time. When I read them a fairy tale, or I tell them without reading it, if I have it memorized, usually that's better, because I can create the eye-to-eye link that and read the room better. Dramatizing without exaggerating, but dramatizing the fairy tale is incredibly useful. And you can see when a kid is too much scared, which is usually never today, but because I
think fairy tales are pretty innocent compared to some other things kids have access to these days.
They are incredibly fragile, but they are desensitized. They can't handle what kids used to be able to handle. But because they are it may seem that they are tougher because they see blood and they don't give a damn. So, but that's because they underestimate violence. They think it's trivial. they think it's a game. They never encountered it. So because we don't live in a violent society for now, we live at least physically violent. But they cannot handle crisis. They are incredibly fragile because they are sheltered, and I am sheltered too. But I am not calling myself out from that. So yeah, we are all on the same boat on this. We Occidental people.
So yeah, like you were speaking about how you engage with them, through the fairy tale. You like to make that eye contact.
Yeah.
Was there anything else after that?
Yes, the poses. When you tell, I learned slowly. I learned how to tell a fairy tale, because when you tell it badly, they don't ask for another usually, and when you tell it well, they will ask for. I can probably pass up to 6 hours telling fairy tales, and they will not get tired. It's I did not expect that when I started, but you have to do it the right way. You have to create, because they will interrupt. Otherwise, they will try to guess what's happening. They will try to make jokes, because they are used to that. They are used to interactive reality, where they can always where they are the center of the universe, basically. And so you have to create the atmosphere. I use candles sometimes because they like the firelight. Firelight has something magical that can placate the spirit, even for me, not just for children. And then they behave. It's hard. Not always they behave. And you have to know when it's the right time.
And you were speaking about so they want to participate, like they want to like make jokes, interact,
yes.
interrupt.
They started this year to tell tales between themselves, sometimes tales that they invented, and usually horror tales, because the parents would not approve. And yeah, of course, usually boys. I usually close my eyes and pretend I don't see or hear, because I think, well, if they don't go too far. There was the Squid Game period,
Yeah.
the last year, where children's even 6 years olds were talking about it. So I had to intervene, basically, to clarify that what is appropriate and what is what kind of violence you can tell.
Okay.
Because there's a difference between the wolf eating the grandma, or the huntsman killing the wolf, and killing people for fun or money or in a game.
Yeah, and how would you go about explaining that to children?
Well, they usually understand by intuition. You
Okay.
can't. You just say it. You just say it. It's different, and it's good that you don't have to explain it, because
Okay.
if you explain too often, they will feel like they are on the same level as you, because they will think that you owe them an explanation for everything that you do. But there are things that I will say, I want them to do things because they trust me, not because I prove them to them.
Yeah, that's
And
an interesting approach. Yeah.
not everything, because if again, it's two poles. You
Yeah, you
can't
got
go
for
to
sure.
one
You
pole.
always got to have a balance.
You mustn't explain everything, or you will be. It's like you're accountable to them, and while it's the reverse, and you can't always say it's because I said it. It doesn't work like that, because that you're a tyrant. Then you're a tyrant. Yeah.
Nice. So switching gears a little bit, we talked briefly about Saint John Bosco. You mentioned that he had
Yes.
some profound symbolic insights. Can you maybe speak to some of those? I was reading up a little bit on him,
Yes.
and I saw that his list of published works is huge. He seemed to have done a lot of stuff. So can you maybe speak to some of the ideas that have touched you personally?
Yes, there are 155 prophetic dreams from Don Bosco,
It's it's
and
crazy.
I think 70 miracles within his lifetime. But usually the miracles are mimicking Christ. So there is the multiplication of chestnuts when he was giving chestnuts to his boys, and he didn't have enough for all of them. There were around 300 boys, I think, and he had only for one third of them, and well, they did not, and so yeah, and all the boys went nuts, and Don Bosco said, "Don't tell that to anyone." So yeah, you can see the parallelism. Then there is the resuscitations of some of his boys. Yeah, he was a sorry. Um, he was very Christ-like. Now that I think about it, yeah, he resuscitated a couple of his boys. Once because the boy went to hell, and so he died young, very young. I think it was 15. And but by the look on his face, he understood that he wasn't in heaven because it was a horrifying face. So he resuscitated him, and the boy thanked him. Oh, thank you, Don Bosco, you saved me. And then Don Bosco said, "Well, do you want to stay here with me, or do you want to go to heaven?" And the boys look at his mother and says, "No, I want to go to heaven right now, so please confess me." And so Don Bosco confesses him, and then he dies, or born he's born into new life, you may say.
Mm.
So yeah, there are a lot of miracles. I won't say them all, but the dreams are interesting because they are usually prophecies on the church. So he prophesied the attack on the church by the national states in the years to come. It was, of course, a symbolic dream. So there was this ship. I should have it here. Oh yeah. Um, Try to picture yourself with me on the seashore, or better still, on an outlying cliff with no other land in sight. The vast expanse of water is covered with a formidable array of ships in battle formation, prows fitted with sharp spear-like beaks capable of breaking through any defense. All are heavily armed with cannons, incendiary bombs, and firearms of all sorts, even books, and are heading toward one stately ship, mightier than them all. As they try to close in, they try to ram it, set it afire, and cripple it as much as possible. This stately vessel is shielded by a flotilla escort. Winds and waves are with the enemy. In the midst of this endless sea, two solid columns, a short distance apart, soar high into the sky. One is surmounted by a statue of the Immaculate Virgin, at whose feet a large inscription reads, "Help of Christians." The other, far loftier and sturdier, supports a communion host of proportionate size and bears beneath it the inscription of "Salvation of Believers." So that's one of the dreams, the first half of one of the dreams that he wrote to the Pope. And the dream continues by the ships trying to destroy the church ship, and the Pope dying in the battle. But another pope is elected immediately, and so the ship is anchored to the two columns and is saved. And so this was immediately before the war between the church and the state nations in Italy and Austria. So yeah, basically that was that.
Yeah.
um, and another dream is Don Bosco is walking on roses, and the roses have thorns, and so he walks the path alone. But people all around him try to follow him, but are discouraged by the thorns. And so he talked to the Virgin Mary and asks, well, how can I do this all alone? No one um, is willing to follow me, basically. And she says to him, I believe, to put a white bandage around their heads with the name, a mysterious name in a dream, and all those with the bandage will follow him. And so, yeah, you can see the structure here is casting identity onto them, is founding the Salesians, and now they can follow him because they have an identity. So, because many priests tried to follow Don Bosco in his steps while he was alive, but it didn't last. So, at following these dreams, Don Bosco understood that he had to found a congregation, basically. And so he asked the Pope for permission, and way later he obtained it. But after the founding of the congregation, after the name is established, it sprouted. Basically, it was I think the fastest rise in a congregation that you may imagine. And it started in the Argentina, I believe, with the first missionaries from the Salesians, and then now it's all over the world.
Yeah, I can sort of imagine this, symbolic pattern of, this seed dropping down. I feel like he was a seed for something that's sprouted into something pretty incredible.
Yes, we usually have the image as a microcosm of you have Don Bosco with his mother, Mama Margherita, Mother Margaret, which was the mother of the boys without parents, basically, because Don Bosco called his mother to help him because he saw that his children, his boys, needed a mother. So they called him father, and so he called his mother from the farm where she was, and she came to him in Turin and stayed with him all of his life, being a mother for them. And so we usually in the Salesian churches we have them right below Christ and the Mother of God. So we have as above, so below. Basically.
Yeah,
they are a reflection of the relationship between. And ironically, the two pillars of the Salesian community are the Eucharist and Maria Ausiliatrice, which means in Latin Mary, the helper of Christians, the advocate of Christians. So you can see, as Matthew Pageau says, the role of Eve is to be the speaker for the lower world. In the same way, the role of Mary is to be the speaker for the church and bring their prayers to Christ. And at the same way, Mother Margherita was the confidant of the listener of all the boys, and she selected their requests and bring them to Don Bosco. And then Don Bosco decided what to do. So yeah, there was this reflection, and that's what every Salesian school tries to replicate, to bring about.
Nice. So in these schools,
Yes.
I'm assuming most of the kids are not explicitly, or maybe not most, but like some of the kids are not explicitly Catholic or religious.
Not necessarily. Not today.
And so, maintaining those two pillars, how do you integrate that with maybe some of the kids not, I don't know, believing, just not identifying with the Christian faith?
Well, they are free to go whenever they want, but barring that,
Good way to put it.
it's not a free school. Your parents are paying to it, but if they love you, they will follow you. I mean, that's you can't escape from love. I mean, there must be a relationship of love, otherwise it doesn't work. Even well, I mean, Don Bosco. Even at the time of Don Bosco, children were not automatically religious, especially because he took them from prisons sometimes. So, and it was still a modern world, the one when Don Bosco lived. So, he said, never force your boys into the sacraments, but offer them the commodity of reaching them easily. So in a Salesian church, there is always, every day of the year, with no exception, 24 hours a day, a priest ready for confession. Because at any time of the day, any day of the year, you must be able to go. You are passing by and you take it. Because the trick is that the trick the devil uses is it's too much work. I have to dress, I have to go out, I have to and while if I'm passing by, the church is built within the school usually, or just outside. So you come out of school from school, and you are going home, and you pass in front of the church, and there is always the opportunity. So you offer them as many opportunity as you can. That's the strategy. And yes, there is opposition. However, if you are forthright, I mean, if you are not trying to antagonize them, but you're not afraid of offending them, they will respond positively, usually, because the students usually realize when you are trying to trick them. And so you are trying to be nice, to be respectful, but you do not care about them. While if you press them because you care about them, they will respond positively. Maybe they refuse, but they will respect you and they will come back. Most of the time. You cannot save everyone, and it's not your responsibility to do so. It's the Lord's responsibility, and he does not fail if he doesn't want. He wants to do something, and you must not fall into the error of thinking that you can or must save them, because that's not your role. You must offer them the opportunity to be saved. That's your role.
And all of that with that current of love, that relationship of pupil to teacher, undergirding all of that.
Yes, and not just that. The relationship between student and teacher is good, is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You need an environment, an educational environment. I cannot be as effective in a public school as I am in a Salesian school, because it's Penelope. Whatever I weave into the day, another destroys the night. So the children do not perceive a unity of educational intent in the teachers. So they are scattered. There is no body. They have no common identity. Teachers in the public school, because everyone has his ideas and there is no uniting principle. Not anymore, at least. And so that's the problem. Every teacher has only the power that's within himself. And while if you are in a congregation or in a school that has a common goal and a common way of seeing things and a common way of living together and sharing, living together, because we eat together, we pray together, then you are not alone, and you can draw from the strengths of your colleagues. And so you are not enough. because I mean, I'm not a saint. I'm not Don Bosco. Maybe Don Bosco was enough, but even him, he built a community around him. He brought in his mother. He brought in his spiritual father, Don Cafasso, who was the how did they call him? The death row priest, because he was the priest in Turin that accompanied all the boys to the firing squad, basically. And even Don Bosco did that with some of his students that were sentenced to die. It was a tough man, Don Bosco. He was extremely aggressive, extremely especially against blasphemy. He said it was said from by students that it was a terrifying vision to see him mad, and many times he subdued his assassins. There were at least, I think, 7. I don't know. I don't remember the exact number, but many assassination attempts on Don Bosco, because he was too faithful to the Pope, and the king and the governor didn't like that, and they thought, that he was bringing the children away from the factories and from the prisons, and they thought they were irredeemable, basically, and that he was bringing criminals out in the streets. And so there were a lot of assassination attempts. 3 of those were 3 assassins were defeated by a dog, the Gray, it was called, by the boys of the oratory and by Don Bosco. It was an old gray wolf dog, I guess. And Don Bosco later will say that it was his guardian angel taking form, because it appeared 3 times and within a 30 years period. And the first time he was already old. So dogs don't live that long. Twice he bite the aggressor, and the 3rd time he bite Don Bosco to block him from coming out of his house, and later Don Bosco will learn that there were armed men outside of his door. So that's a lot of fun stories to tell your children, because if your school is named after Don Bosco, or rarely that Salesian schools are named after Mary, but if Don Bosco is an important figure, foundational figure of your school, you have stories to tell, and they create this sense of belonging that is very important for learning environment. And when I say learning, I say that in a Christian sense, not just in a growing environment. Salesians are not that oriented towards financial or economical success. The motto is that we try to create good Christians and honest citizens. And most of Salesian schools are teaching kids to work, carpenters, smiths, and something like that. They are not theoretic schools.
Okay, so like more trades, crafts, things that can
craftsmanship. Yes, like Don Bosco did. Don Bosco learned by himself, with the teachers, but learned to be a carpenter, to be a smith, all these things, just to teach his students.
Yeah, I get the feeling that maybe these types of professions lend themselves more to this, I guess, communal guild sort of spirit that we were talking about a bit before.
Yes.
I think it really fits his character as this like rough around the edges kind of guy. Also must be a really good role model for the kids, kind of something, like some figure they look up to. Is that something you hear often? Is that something that's emphasized in the
Well, it was for me. I grew up in a Salesian school, so yeah, it was a great role model for me. I should have one of these images here, but yeah, I can find it right now. Maybe it's in the other room. But for me, for my brother, for my sisters, we all grew up in a Salesian school, and yeah, it's a great role model because it's a meek figure, but he's very courageous and he's very rash, and he's very thoughtful at the same time. And so whatever your temperament is, you can see yourself in Don Bosco, because he had both extremes. Yeah, again, not like Christ, but akin to Christ. He was extremely wrathful and in his anger, but he was the meekest of them all when confronted with legitimate authority. He was completely submissive to his bishop. Whenever the bishop said something that he didn't agree with, he was completely obedient, and up to the point to renounce to his vocation, because the bishop forbid him to go to missions. He wanted to go in the Amazons as a missionary. However, it was forbid from his spiritual father, and his spiritual father, who was Don Cafasso, the death row priest, forbid him and said, "No, you stay here because God wants you to stay here." And Don Bosco just had a vision about the Amazons by God. So, however, he obeyed. Yeah. And later, in another dream, he knew that the Salesians had to go to the Amazon later, and so the first mission was there. So he was not him, but his body that went, that went to the Amazons.
Yeah, like zooming out a bit more broadly, I feel like this is something that I find really interesting about the Catholic and Orthodox faiths. Like, I grew up Protestant, so I never had that sort of, I wouldn't say, for lack of a better term, middle level between you and Christ. So obviously you're aware of the highest principle, you're aware of Christ.
Yes, the ladder.
That. But, yeah, exactly. The ladder just felt sort of incomplete. You had the beginning and then you had the end, but what's in the middle? And the more I engage with these ideas, the more I notice that saints often take that middle place and can be really, really exceptional as just ways to facilitate that ascent into what they ultimately even point to. Like you said, very Christ-like.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I grew up Catholic. I was born Catholic. I am still Catholic. I did not see the ladder because many Catholic places are just very Protestantized today.
Okay.
They are, you and Jesus, basically. Yeah, there is not. In the Salesians are an exception.
Okay.
But yeah, they are Saint Francis of Sales, from which the name Salesians, and Saint John Bosco, and the Mother of God, and they are very, very explicit and very thoughtful about that. However, in the rest of my Catholic experience is very Protestant-like, so I can feel you. So I had a point in my life where I realized that my faith was a facade, basically. So there was no real substance behind it. And like many, Peterson brought out a spark that rekindled the fire. And so after Peterson, I rediscovered my tradition, basically, and Jonathan, with the help of Jonathan, a lot. And so now I'm here, and part of my mission, I think, will be to bring to Italy the symbolic perspective in some way. I don't know yet. I'm speaking with some friends who can understand it, who are ready, because not clearly you have to go. One of the great debates in the Symbolic World community is where do people can start to, where's the point?
Yeah.
What will we show first to people? What's the video? And so there's my cousin, who is a physician, theoretic physician, and a small group of people. So we will try to rekindle the community approach and top down way of seeing things. And we'll start small and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Just I'm still looking for that group of people. So if people know me and are interested, if anybody sees this that knows me personally, feel free to reach out. Because yeah, eventually you want those, like, it's fun to talk about them, it's fun to watch the videos and everything, but eventually you want to kind of make them land in a tangible
in a community
place. Yeah, in a community. So yeah, I think that's a perfect place to end it. Jonathan often says, go to church.
Yes.
So yeah, Jacopo, it was a really fun conversation. It was great talking with you. Hopefully we can talk again sometime. Thank you very much for coming.
Sure. It was a pleasure.
All right.
Bye-bye.
So that is the end of the recording. Yeah, it was very nice. Any comments, thoughts, feedback, anything?
It was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it was the first interview of my life, so I was a bit nervous.
No, I think you did good. It didn't show.
Yeah, as you can see, my English is not perfect, sadly, because I understand everything and easily, and I can write it fine. But however, I do not have many occasions to train myself into speaking it, because there's not. Yeah, I know I speak Italian all day long. So yeah, my mind goes ahead and my tongue can't follow. There is a disconnection between the head and the body.
Very symbolic.
I can't incarnate the principle. The ground is not receptive.
Nice.
Well, it was fun.
Really
Thank you very much.
It really didn't show at all. So I think you'll be perfectly understandable.
It showed. You are too kind.
No, your accent is there, but I think I didn't have trouble understanding what you meant. Is what I'm trying to say.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it was fine. I think that's a very good work you're doing here. I've listened to the other interviews, and they were a lot of fun. So keep doing the good work.
Right,
the community is growing, and I will share this video, but the other videos I commented. So
thank you very much, man. I appreciate it a lot.
Keep going. Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck to you too with your project. Hopefully we find ways to make this land.
Sure.
All right. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.